welcome back to Cricket Trackers special show in the air with me, Nivedna Prabhu. I hope all of you are excited to give me your predictions and analysis of what you think is going to be happening on day 3. Lekin, before we, of course, start bringing my cricket guests on the show, let's take a quick look at what the scorecard was last evening. Yahan pe, of course, Sri Lanka needs 419 runs. Ek taraf Shreyas Iyer proving to be super consistent in both the innings, 92 and, of course, 67. Dusri taraf, Angelo Matthews was just able to contribute 43 and Kusal Mendes 16. Lekin in the fourth innings, currently they are 28 for 1, which is why they need 419 runs. Of course, my first cricket guest who's joined me, Pratyay Tiwari, did tell us what he thinks is going to be happening today, and probably this would be wrapped up sooner than expected. लेकिन आप सबको क्या लगता है मुझे comment section में बताइए. We'll continue talking about it as well. Let me bring on Pratyay on the show. And Pratyay, we've of course had a detailed talk last evening in that post-match analysis. Anything, any other points that should probably you want to share today with the viewers that we did not cover last evening?
Well, I've been constantly saying that this series has been a little disappointing when you consider the fact that Sri Lanka are playing in conditions which are close to their home conditions, because this is not your overseas. This is actually overseas test for them in a way, but this is your subcontinental conditions. You're playing in Asia nonetheless. What I have not been able to actually come to terms with is the fact that the kind of surrender I have seen with their batters, even in the previous innings when they were tumbled out for 109, you really did not see something, because on the same track, you saw the Indian batters scoring the way they did, 4 or 5 runs and over. You do not see that very regularly in Test cricket. But then the way they dominated the bowlers, of course, you do not expect the likes of Jasprit Bumrah, Ravichandran Ashwin, Jadeja, or even Shami to be dominated. But at least as international cricketers, you want them to feel challenged. Right now, I think it's like that Sri Lankan batters are just serving things on the platter. It's on the taking, and Indian bowlers are just picking up the pie and they are eating it, because they're not showing any sort of resistance. Even right now, I see. It has never happened that a target this big of this magnitude has ever been chased in the Test history. So I don't think that even Sri Lankans would be right now looking towards the win, because it's miles away, it's light years away. 400 runs, that's a lot of runs. But the thing is that at least you know that you have 3 days of cricket left. Back yourself to probably try and bat the entire day today. Show that you have got the guts, show that you have got the strength, and show that you have got at least the capacity to compete with this Indian side, which I think has been missing. And that is why exactly wins and losses are a part of the sport. But when you do not compete and lose, that I think is the borderline. I mean, that is extremely, extremely disappointing. So I think that is what Sri Lanka would want to do today.
Okay, and I think that's a fair point. You're also playing in conditions like in India, so it shouldn't have been that much of a struggle at the end of the day. Despite the fact that, of course, there were concerns for them initially for missing out a few players because of injury concerns and things like that, the intent was missing at the end of the day. And if intent is lost and the competition, uska maza hi chala jata hai. So, aap sabko kya kehna hai about Pratyay's viewpoint? I think he has summarized this perfectly. Do you all have to agree? Do you agree to this or do you disagree? Let me know in the comment section. And dusri taraf, we have our next cricket guest joining us on the show. It is, of course, Chirag. Chirag, welcome back on the show. Sabse pehle, there were some fabulous performances yesterday. Kahan se shuru kare? Should we start with Shreyas Iyer, Pant? Who would you like to go with? If you could also take a look at their individual performances, so Chirag can let us know. Unke report card ke hisab se, what is your takeaway?
श्रेयस अय्यर का तो ऐसा है कि जब भी इन्हें मौका मिलता है तो हमेशा इन्हें मुझे अच्छा परफॉर्म कर रहे हैं, और काफी पिछले काफी टाइम से जब आप देखो मतलब इनकी बैटिंग में इनका जो लेवल है वो बढ़ता ही है और हर बार ही अच्छा परफॉर्म करते हैं। और ऋषभ पंत का ऐसा है कि हम उन्हें जब वो रन्स नहीं करते तो काफी क्रिटिसाइज भी करते हैं कि ऐसा केयरलेस शॉट खेलकर आउट होते हैं, लेकिन जब इतना मतलब तेज खेलते हैं वो टेस्ट मैच में और कहीं ना कहीं वो टेस्ट मैच को एंटरटेनिंग बनाते हैं तो अच्छा भी लगता है। तो अपलॉडेबल इनिंग्स दोनों की, श्रेयस अय्यर, ऋषभ पंत। और अगर श्रीलंका की बात करें तो श्रीलंका भी देखो 3 दिन बाकी है और वही बैटिंग लाइनअप है जो फर्स्ट टेस्ट मैच में कोलैप्स कर गया था, सेकंड टेस्ट मैच फर्स्ट इनिंग्स में कोलैप्स किया था। तो अभी मुझे यहाँ से श्रीलंका की उम्मीदें मतलब कुछ ज्यादा बनती हुई दिखाई दे नहीं रही हैं। लेकिन क्रिकेट है, अनप्रेडिक्टेबल है, कुछ भी हो सकता है। पर अगर अभी देखे ना अभी इस पॉइंट पर तो 90 to 95% इंडिया मैच जीत चुका है और आज ही जीत जाएगा बहुत जल्दी।
Okay, so he's already given his prediction in terms of what's going to be happening for the result, which of course even Pratyay did put that point across. But like Pratyay said, at the end of the day, intent is super important. Even though you're an Indian cricket fan and you're probably supporting one particular team, you would like to see the competition just get
हाँ,
much better. And this is also because of the fact that they are playing under that points table for the WTC. So I'm pretty sure Sri Lanka would also want some points to their credit. So eventually, the competition of the World Test Championship final technically happens to be more interesting. So all of you tell me, what are your thoughts on the current test that's happening? And dusri taraf, let's take a look at what is happening on social tracker. What are people talking about there in terms of this particular clash between India and Sri Lanka? And also get some viewpoints. Yahan pe Kolkata Knight Riders saying 8 sleep, 50 repeat shares are here for you. Um, we have another tweet where it says some technical issues for Kohli here. Both innings hitting across a straight ball. First innings playing around his front pad too highlighted a drop in technical expertise before, but it is really starting to affect his batting average now, and it's been for a while. Delhi Capitals with shots all around the ground. Of course, Rishabh Pant created history in the most Rishabh Pant way. Rishabh Pant one day will be a great of the greatest test player cricket world has ever witnessed. Fastest 50s by balls. Okay, he's right at the top. Rohit Sharma fan club saying maybe some fans are upset by Rohit's dismissal, but I really enjoyed his batting. He faced all odds and scored that 46 runs by great intent and focus. And the last thing, Roh is a type of player who always plays for team, never for personal milestones. Okay. Now, if we could take a quick look at that Virat Kohli tweet, I'll come to you, Pratyay, because this is something that Sunil Gavaskar also opined about, talking about how that really caused that wicket over there. What do you think is happening? Let's not even talk about the century part, but in terms of his dismissal, it's quite disappointing.
Yes, you would say, because see, I think in the first innings it was actually a little bit really unlucky because the ball had really kept low. It almost rolled on the pitch, so he could not have done anything about it. But I think what disappointed me more was the second innings dismissal. Personally, was the reason was that he had already been dismissed that way, and Virat Kohli, I don't think that he is someone who should allow himself to be twice unlucky, because he is too prized a player to get caught up with unluck two times in a single test match. So I think that yes, if you talk about the technicalities of it, there could be so many ways. As you rightly said, that even the great Sunil Gavaskar said about it. His viewpoint, of course, being correct in a way or two, that when you play on these kind of tracks across the line, you become a contender for LBW, and that is exactly what we saw happening with him on both the occasions. I think someone who has actually, from other batters, I remember Alistair Cook and Kevin Peterson, the way they used to bat in this series in 2012 against India. I remember the way they batted, and even other batters whom you will see that these are the players who have actually got a lot of success in the subcontinental conditions. They have this habit of covering their pad and bringing their bat straight down, as straight as possible, because by that you kind of evade the chances of getting LBW. So I think on the technical aspect, he of course would know better that why he kept on playing across the line instead of playing with a straight bat, which actually makes him safe from the LBW dismissals. But I think the second time was more disappointing because the ball had not kept as low as it did in the first occasion. And secondly, when you have already been dismissed once that particular way, you know that the previous time also you were playing the across the line. You know that this track has never been true, because all 3 days, right from the first morning, rather the first afternoon, and even from the first over itself, when you have seen the ball misbehaving, you really know that this track is not reliable in terms of bounce. So you want to be prepared that there might be something that will suddenly happen and you will lose your wicket. So I think the second time I expected him to be a little bit more prepared, but again falling LBW in the similar fashion, playing across the line, not showing the face of the bat. I think that was disappointing. I think the century part, I now feel that India is not going to play too many test matches, which in a way could be both a blessing and as well as a curse, because this is one of the formats that Kohli loves playing the most. But we cannot forget that he is a white ball champion, absolutely, and there's a lot of white ball cricket coming up. I still feel that he would actually be able to break this rut of this century drought. But yes, both these dismissals, it was his 101st test match. It was the day night affair. He was playing in Bengaluru, so we all expected him to do a little bit more. But then that's the con of being Virat Kohli. You are expected to do things all the time, and when you don't perform or you don't live up to that billing, it becomes really more difficult than any other player. But
Yeah,
that's
and I
all you
think
can do about it.
I mean, we as fans feel so disappointed, so we can imagine what the cricketer is really going through. But dusri taraf, of course, a lot of comments coming in. Everybody's saying hi, hello to all of you from all three of us. There's also a question coming in. I will quickly take that question, but before that, let's talk about someone who has proved effective for the Sri Lankan side. Is Praveen Jaivikrama. If you could take a look at his stats over here. 4 wickets, 19 overs with an economy of 4.10 and has, of course, given away 78 runs. Chirag, I'll come to you. What did you think about Vikrama's performance?
आई मीन राइट अभी देखो पूरे टेस्ट मैच में बहुत ही अच्छा परफॉर्म किया है सिर्फ 4 टेस्ट मैचेस खेले हैं काफी यंग है और जिस तरह का परफॉर्मेंस रहे काफी इंप्रेसिव है ये दिखाता है कि कितना पोटेंशियल है इनके अंदर और क्वालिटी बैटिंग लाइनअप आपके सामने है तो उनके सामने इस तरह का परफॉर्मेंस करना वो काफी अच्छा रहा
Okay,
मतलब
and
इनमें है टैलेंट
okay, talent is what of course Chirag has to say, and of course he's proved to be really effective with the ball. Talking about people who have been effective with the ball, a question coming in from Kapil Verma. Now, Pratay or Chirag, either of you could be answering this. Who will take the most number of wickets in the second innings? Who would like to take that? Pratay, would
अक्षर
you want to
पटेल
answer? Okay, Chirag saying
I,
Aksar.
I think so. I think so. I will actually put my bet on a spinner, despite the fact how we have seen the Pacers doing in this game, specifically for India in the first innings, and that is purely because this is a third day track.
Yeah.
Technically a third day track. Probably I would say this is already a fifth day track in some terms because of what we have seen. It was like a day three track. It was behaving like a day three track right since day one. And on these kind of tracks, as a batter, what exactly can you do? You can just pray that you do not get that kind of a delivery. As we are talking about Virat Kohli, I think that kind of a delivery will come at you at any point of time. You just cannot do anything about it. You can just be prepared, or you can probably have some sort of safety net that you can save yourself if that happens again. So I think, as I said, that the bounce has not been true at this track right since the start. There's a bit of help because of course we are playing with the pink ball, so there is a little bit of more help for the Pacers as well. So I think it has been actually, in a sense, a bowler's test if you speak from the Indian perspective. But what again, as I said, is disappointing is that even when we were looking at that Jaivikrama graphic, if you look at his economy, if in this game, if you are leaking runs at 4 or 5, then definitely you are not you have not had the best of test matches because of course yes, 4 wickets, that's good. I mean you will laud him and you will pat his back for taking 4 wickets. It's okay, but you have to make sure that you are not allowing your opponents to run away with the game, and that is exactly what Sri Lankans have allowed time and again in this test match. Because whether you talk about the way Pant played, you do not see things like 30 ball 50 happening every day in a test match. Even if Rishabh Pant is playing, you do not expect this thing to happen regularly. But in this particular inning, we have seen that happening twice now, because in the first innings as well, he just blasted off. India was scoring at a brilliant run rate. In the second innings, the same story repeated. So I think the Sri Lankans, actually, the most disappointing part has been that they have not been able to control the Indian batters at all. I mean, not even at one point have you felt that the Sri Lankan bowlers are trying to, or are being able to create any sort of pressure. On the other hand, the Indian bowlers have been doing exactly that. We saw that in the first innings, 109, and even yesterday, in whatever little play we had, Sri Lanka batted not more than 10 overs. And in that process, also in that short period, they lost another wicket. So I think this test match, I don't think there is any positive for Sri Lanka, and they would want to remember anything about it really. And it's a shame that it was Suranga Lakmal's last, a legend, Sri Lankan legend, but they've not been able to give him that kind of a farewell. But yes, speaking of the question, who would take most wickets? I think yes, I have to back probably Ravichandran Ashwin and even Akshar Patel, because on these kind of tracks, you know what they are capable of. So I'm going with a spinner.
Okay, Kapil, we hope Pratay has analyzed that for you and given his prediction as well. And before we wrap up, Rao Asif has said that it will be interesting to see India versus Pakistan in the final of the World Test Championship final. Well, with the way Pakistan and the Australia series is happening, I mean, there was so much of expectation about this particular tour, especially after the fact that Australia was touring after 24 years. But
28.
Pratik,
Yeah.
Chirag, would either of you, just quickly want to point out before we wrap up? There's another sort of disappointment happening there, especially with the pitches, right? You wouldn't want a competition of, when of course you're talking about international tours like this happening, where you wait after 24 years and then you have a
Right.
pitch like this. Would either of you want to answer that before we wrap up? Although that prediction is the great Ravasif, even we would probably want for that to happen. But would either of you want to have a quick word on what's happening currently?
See, I think, of course, I mean, see, if you have to make it a level playing field for the batters and bowlers, you have to ensure that things are given to the bowlers as well. The
Yeah,
Pakistan, I mean, we have not had a lot of cricket in Pakistan in the last decade or so for
yeah,
unfortunate reasons. But of course, when you look at the kind of tracks they have offered, you suddenly go back into time. You start feeling that we are back in the 2002, maybe 2005, 2007, when the batters would just make merry at the expense of the bowlers. There would be hardly anything for the bowlers, because that decade, the 90s or the 2000s, if you look at the records, the kind of things that happened with the batters, probably that was the best era in the modern generation. It was the best era for the batters, because they managed to create so many records, and that generation had so many batters from all the countries, whether you talk about South Africa, whether you talk about India, West Indies. All legends of the game have a lot of legends of the game have actually come up in that particular era. When you look at the track that Pakistan have offered to the Australians in this particular series, suddenly the mind goes back to that era, because you are seeing things happening like they used to happen in that era. But now in the 2015, or rather you would say that this last decade, in the last 5 or 6 years, the rise of bowlers has been phenomenal. I mean, just even if you look at India, when was it that you used to remember India for their pacers? But at this point in time, there are certain situations when you back the team to win, when the opposition is needing only 150 or 180 runs. Even then you expect that Indian bowlers में शायद इतना दमखम है कि वो all out कर लेंगे, and specifically that is down to the pacers. So I think
right.
in this bowler dominated era, the kind of track that Pakistan have offered actually bring back the memories of a time that is probably past and probably behind us. But yes, it's a little bit disappointing, because as Ramesh Raja himself said, that it's not a great advertisement for Test cricket when you see these kind of dull, sleep-inducing draws. So of course, it's not a great advertisement for Test cricket. But there's still one more match to go. Two tracks, two very, I would say, very placid kind of tracks so far. Let's hope the one in Lahore turns out a little better than this.
Okay, so we will wrap up on that very optimistic note. But one thing for sure is everything that's happening in the world of cricket, doesn't matter which tournament, which series. We're all super excited on Crick Tracker to be joining all of you. So we're very glad that all of you could join us and bring in these questions. Rao, I see your question about Virat Kohli century as well. But like I've said, nobody has an answer to that except for the day that it will happen. And on that note, I want to thank everyone for joining us. We will see you on the other side in the post match analysis of India versus Sri Lanka. So don't forget to join us. Take care and stay safe.